Today we're heading into Concrete City. It's an abandoned town of concrete houses up near Nanticoke, Pennsylvania. And my only goal today is to take some pictures of what I see and explore. I do apologize. I had audio recording this entire time, but unfortunately I was still getting off of a sickness, so it was nothing but sniffles and coughing for about 2 hours. So what we're going to do is future me from when this video was recorded at least, I'm going to walk through, what we're seeing, and then whenever I go to take any pictures, I'll walk through the composition I'm looking for and what exactly I saw in the photo. Past me will also explain a little bit of the history behind Concrete City, what exactly it is, when it was created, what it was for, things like that. But that's a little bit later in the video, and we'll get to that at some point. But for now, let's go explore. Now, as we enter our first house, the first things that I notice are the holes in the walls, which would make perfect framing for any self-portraits or if there was a subject on the other side of it. But first, I want to go upstairs and explore the upstairs and see what that has to offer. So we come out the stairs, go into our first room, and obviously we got to check out the graffiti because that's one of the things about this place is it's heavily graffitied. But we get our first frame. What I'm looking at is basically using the window as a frame within a frame to not only draw attention to the subject of the picture, which would be that building, but also to the fact that there are so many trees and brush that are growing up around this due to these buildings being, 100 years old and abandoned. And as we turn to our left, we're met with our second frame. This one's just a hole in the ceiling, letting some light through. I think it portrays that dystopian style. But basically, we're backing up, trying to get that framed in the center so that we have some of the door frame and the graffiti on the outside of it. Once we finish up with that, I'm going to just go around, check out the rest of the upstairs, see if it has anything else to offer. Unfortunately, it didn't have anything else interesting enough for me to take a picture of, or at least not one that made it into the final cut. So I decided we'll head back downstairs, see if we can check out some of the framing that I saw earlier on my way in, see if we can get any good shots from that. So we back up a little bit, set up the tripod, and then we change the camera orientation from landscape to portrait. I decided this was a good framing, but it needed a subject, so I'd use myself as a subject. Pull the camera up to eye level, change it to portrait mode, set a 10-second timer, and then take a picture. Once we finish up in that half, we're going to head over to the other half, see if there's anything interesting there. Obviously, a lot of these duplexes are going to be the same on both sides, but with, vandalism, graffiti, things like that, they might differ a little bit. We don't see anything downstairs, so we head upstairs, check out some of the rooms up there. Don't see anything in the first few, but then as we come in here, we turn around and get our third shot. It's a lot like the second one, just some light coming through the hole in the roof, but we're still going to frame it up, try to get that centered, some graffiti on the outside, and then that light will draw the viewer's eye in. I don't find anything else in there, so we head out to the next building. We walk up. I see if we can get any frames here, but I can't find anything. So then we continue forward, and just after a few steps, I look around, and there's our next frame. It's the same thing, frame within a frame, but this time we're looking at the water and trying to get the angle of the building in it too. We skipped over the last house because there wasn't a good entrance for it. But as we show up here, I notice I have a little bit more room. I throw on my wide angle lens, try to get an expansive shot of the building, and it turns out like this. Once that shot looks good, we pick up the tripod and turn it around because I notice there is a tree inside of this building behind me. So we take our camera, drop it into portrait mode, and try to frame up the tree with that door frame. Once the shot looks how I want it to, pick up the tripod, move on to the next building, and as I come in, I notice this giant hole in the ceiling. So we turn around, try to set up the tripod, and get a good wide shot of that hole in the ceiling. Once we're finished with that, we're taking off our photography caps and putting on our history caps because it's time for our first history lesson.
Concrete City, as we know it today, was a community of duplexes that was entirely made out of poured concrete. It was opened to the public in 1913, but it was meant mainly to serve as housing for employees or higher ranking employees of the Truesdale Colliery coal mine in the area.
But this community didn't come without its issues, just like I'm having issues trying to get this framing. Basically, the goal is another frame within a frame, just framing this broken out window and trying to get the building and the two windows centered in this broken out window so we can get enough foreground elements in the frame for this picture. Next, we're going to do the hokey pokey and turn ourselves around because that's what it's all about. And then we're going to try to do almost the same thing, but in the opposite direction, getting some of the hole in the floor with the framed window on the other side. Next, we're just going to spin the camera from portrait to landscape, back out the lens a little bit and get a wide shot like this. Now I know I want to head into the next building, so we'll grab all of our stuff and get ready to take some shots in there. Now I already knew there was a framing up here that I'd want as a self-portrait, so we're going to set up the tripod, try to get it pointed so I'm centered in that frame you see in the hole in the wall, and then I'll put on a 10-second timer, press the shutter button, run into the other room, and see if we can get a picture. Once we're finished, we'll head out and we'll pretty soon be greeted by our next picture. So with this water here, I want to see some reflections with the buildings, and I think a wide angle shot will do that nicely. Now we'll keep walking, see if we spot anything interesting. Now, when I first walked in, I immediately noticed this piece of rebar hanging from the ceiling. I initially tried just getting a shot like that, but I decided it would be a little better if I put the rebar on the left third and put that window on the right third, just to give a little bit of dynamic range and foreground element. Now, once that shot looks good, we're going to grab our tripod and head back outside and go to the next building, which is where we'll have our next history lesson.
And some of these issues they tried to correct during the build process. They put crude oil, lime, and some other stuff into the walls of these homes. However, all the walls, ceilings, and floors still remain damp due to the concrete. But the even larger issue with these homes was that there wasn't any indoor plumbing. See, all of the plumbing was just an outhouse outside. So everyone had to go out to the concrete outhouse in order to go to the bathroom, and eventually the township decided they didn't like that. So the township demanded in the early 1920s that this community install a septic system for all of the houses, which totaled to about $200,000. And at that point, it just wasn't cost effective to put that septic system in, and thus the houses were abandoned.
But with these houses being abandoned, that means they offer some great picture and exploration opportunities. And the next opportunity I saw was in this doorway. I wanted to put it in portrait mode to get as much of the ceiling, the floor, and the walls as I could, which gave me this. With that one finished, we moved on to the next house, which proved to have an opportunity as well. This one has something you don't see very often, which is a giant hole in the wall. So I used the framing of that hole in the wall, in addition to the reflection and the water, to get this shot. Next, we stepped outside and I pulled out my long focal length lens to try and get some compression on an architectural shot between these two buildings in front of me. Then we keep walking to the next set of duplexes. As I peek through the door, I see the remains of what used to be a fire pit, which would make a great foreground element. So I take that, stick it on the bottom third of my frame, and then center the staircase in the back. We hop inside and head upstairs to see if we can find anything else up here. The next thing we find is just a simple shot of this pool of water and the trees in the background, just showing off the landscape around. So we back out of that house, go on to the next ones. Whenever we enter this next one, we're greeted with a hole in the floor. So we back up a little bit and try to frame up a nice shot that includes the hole and the stair, plus any graffiti on the walls. We move on from there and head over to one of my favorite spots of the day, where there's a burned out car sitting in between two houses. One of the houses, as you can see, has a lot of the roof caved in. So this proved to be one of my favorite spots of the day, giving me this shot. I ended up hanging around this burned out car, taking some videos with a few different lenses to make a car edit for about the next half an hour. If I decide to put all these clips together into an edit, you can find any information regarding the new channel it would be posted on my current Instagram channel, @LilFishy. Once I finished taking all those videos, I got another shot from the other side of the car, this time taking in all the buildings behind it that I didn't get with that first shot. I ended up sticking around a little bit longer and ended up going to the top and bottom floor of both buildings. This allowed me to get a few of my favorite shots that I got while I was there. I then continued on to the final 4 buildings of the trip. The first thing I noticed when I walked up was that this building had sunk a few feet into the ground, which gave some good views of the staircase from the outside, leading to a picture like this. Now we continue walking, and as we keep walking, I notice this next building has half of the second floor caved in on itself. Now this led to an interesting picture, but it also leads us to our third history talk of the day.
Now, each of these duplexes had what honestly most people my age nowadays would love to have in a house. We're talking 4 bedrooms upstairs, spaces downstairs for dining, pantry, kitchen, and then there's even a basement space or storage space underneath the house. I mean, we're talking today, you're looking at least $2,000 in rent. I mean, maybe 3 if depending on where you live. But seriously, these houses were built and made with the employees and the families in mind. And in addition to everything that they had in one of these houses, there was community spaces. There was a community pool. They would hold yearly gatherings to try to make the houses look better. They really tried to upkeep the place while they were living here.
But despite all that upkeep, obviously these houses were eventually abandoned due to that large price tag associated with a septic system. But in leaving these houses abandoned, they give people like me and you a chance to explore history for ourselves. And while I explored, I documented my history with this place much in the same way they did so many years ago.
Now, currently, the Concrete City is owned by Nanticoke Municipal. It's open to the public, so you're free to come in here, park along the road out front, and it's a short walk back to Concrete City. And once you get back here, you're free to explore. The one thing I do recommend, though, is obviously since these buildings are 100 years old and unkept, you want to make sure you be careful while you're exploring. If you're into ATV, mountain bike riding, anything like that, a lot of this area back here is used for a lot of that. There are obviously a bunch of large puddles because it rained the past week. So come out here, explore, be safe about it, but enjoy.